Hello again, this is Matthew Vozella from the Bryant University Audiovisual Office. We are back with part 4 of our Editing 101 tutorials. In this one we are going to cover just two basic items. We are going to cover title slides and transitions. Although these are simple concepts, executing them can be a little tricky. So let's start with the first one, the title slide. Before I even get into how to make a title slide, I want you to notice that down here in the timeline, I've already blocked everything out as you saw in the past couple of tutorials. Now I need to add a title slide and several transitions in between them. So before we get into that, I just want to show you some basic tools that you can use in the timeline to help you move around clips and manipulate them, just so that you can easily move them to add these transitions and title slides. So the first thing is how to move multiple clips. You obviously know that you can come over here to the title area on one of these clips, select the clip, and then just kind of drag it away. Move it into a different layer if you want to, or do whatever you need. But what you also can do, let's put it back to where it was here. 1 second, there we are. What you can also do is you can highlight several clips. So the way you do that is you put your cursor off the clips, click and hold, and then drag a box, and it's going to basically take all the ones that you want. So in this case, I want all of them except this Bryant roll-in at the beginning. So I've now selected them all, so I can now move them all as one big piece, just like so. So now that I have some space in here to work with, I'll go ahead and put in a title slide. So let's go up here to the title drop-down menu and then select New Title. You have three options. Default Still, which is exactly what it says. It's just text kind of floating in the air. Default Roll, which is a lot like a credit roll you'd see at the end of a movie, either top to bottom or bottom to top. And then Default Crawl, which is kind of like you would see on a news ticker from CNN or MSNBC or Fox that would kind of tick down along the bottom of the screen. For our purposes, being a title slide, we're going to do a Default Still. So I'll select Default Still. This is going to change my overall view. As you can see, the text is overlaid from wherever I have my player head right down here. So I'm actually going to move my player head onto some blank frames, just so I can see what I'm doing more effectively. Now if we refer over into our bin area, you can see that it's actually added the title 01 and the media type is still image. So I'm actually going to change that title. Just do title slide. That way, especially when you have multiple slides, title slides that is, it just becomes easier to discern them by actually giving them a name. Okay. Then in order to actually edit the title slide, as soon as you create the title slide, it will actually add it to your timeline, wherever your player head was located. So in our case, it was right here. So then we can double click on the actual title slide, and if you look, it's in video 2. It's always going to place it in the one above it. So in our case, all our video is in video 1, so we'll place the title slide in video 2. If we had video in video 2, it would place it in video 3, and so on. But at any rate, we're going to go ahead and double click the actual piece of media in the timeline. And now we are prompted with a variety of different little objects here. So perhaps there we are. Alright, didn't get my double click quite right. So as you can see now, it has turned our preview window into a bit of an editor, and it's turned our bin into some text selection options. This is a lot like Microsoft Word. So as you can see, you have different styles here. You can choose your font options, your font size, how you want everything aligned. I always try and center my text, so I'm going to click this center tool. And I think we're going to use a simple drop shadow text. So we'll use, say, this one that has a white drop shadow on it. That's a little cheesy. So let's actually go for, yeah, we'll use this one. Alright, so now that we have kind of the text options we want, we have it centered, we're ready to start. So we will select this text tool right here, or excuse me, type tool, and actually click in the area we want to type, and then it just literally creates a line that we can type on. So what we are doing is the PowerPoint Advancer tutorial. Don't worry about size and position quite yet. Always check your spelling. The Adobe Premiere Elements does not have a spell checker built into the title slide menus, so if you're a notoriously bad speller like myself, I recommend that you spell check it prior, and then just you can either copy and paste it or just go from there. So now that we have the PowerPoint Advancer tutorial in place, what I want to do is I want to come here to my selection tool, And then once I have my selection tool selected, I'll click on the text I just made. As you can see, it's given us a series of boxes that we can then stretch and alter the way it looks. And then you can also reposition it. So I want to kind of position it up at the top here. Actually, let's go down at the bottom. And like so. PowerPoint Advancer tutorial. Okay. Now then, now that we have all of our text mapped out, we can go ahead and click away. What that's going to do is it's going to take away, you can see over here in the bin, it is now back to its original settings. And if you did, for some reason, again, want to edit it after the fact, you can just double click on it in the timeline and it will enable editing. So what I want to do is I want to bring this over to about here. Alright, and then I'm going to leave all my footage in the timeline pressed over so that I can very clearly see what's going on. So I'll place my player head prior to the title slide and click play just to watch what happens. And there we are. Okay, so that's pretty good, but what I would actually like to happen is I would like for this PowerPoint Advancer tutorial to appear at the bottom of this right here. So I want it to appear kind of right across here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch this little movie clip of the Bryant roll in, because I know at a certain point what's called the opacity dips down so that it becomes a bit dimmer. So let's watch that. There it goes. Okay, so I know that I'm very close to where I want it. Another trick in the timeline tools, we're going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so what we're looking at is a zoomed in version. Here's the Bryant roll in, here's the title slide I just made. If you notice my cursor, it looks like a standard mouse pointer right now, and if you hang it over this, it does the same thing. But watch what happens when I bring the cursor to the edge of a clip. We have that, and then there. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not exactly sure what this tool is called, but I call it the stretch tool. What it does is if you have more footage in your original clip, so a prime example, we have about 12 seconds of footage right here, but the original clip up in the bin is 30 seconds long. So by stretching it, by getting your tool to look like that, you can actually just grab the end of it and stretch it out. And all it's going to do is add the extra footage into the timeline. So if you need just a couple extra seconds, this is a real handy way how to fill in that gap. So we'll just drop it like that. So now I have a small amount of footage here underneath the title slide. Now if you remember when we were referring to the editing sandwich, I said that the video layers above video 1, video 2, video 3 are always going to be the ones in which you see. Title slides are a bit unique in the term that they are actually see-through. The text is not, but the rest of the frame is. So any footage that's under a title slide will actually show through. And I'll show you what I mean. We're going to back the player head up just a touch and watch what happens. Ooh, a little jam up there. Let's try it again. There we go. So you can see it says PowerPoint Advancer over my symbol. Then it goes to blank, and then it goes completely black. So what we want to do for this is, because I don't want that text to just kind of pop up as it does, just blink just like that, I actually want it to kind of gradually fade in. So what we need to do for that is we need to then add transitions. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to Edit in the bin, and then you have a series of selections. I'm going to choose Transitions, and then you can see you have a series of transitions. If you click on any one of these, we'll do Tumble Away, it's going to give you a quick example of what the transition looks like, transferring from clip A to clip B. For the most part, I tend to stick in this dissolve area. I'm of the mind that transitions should be the least noticeable possible, unless you're trying to draw attention to it. And these dissolve areas tend to draw the least amount of attention. So what we want to do is we want to do several things. First, I want to go into my clip down here at the bottom, and I want this to fade up from black, and then at the end I want it to fade out to black. So this is what's called dip to black. So if we take a look, you can see what it does here. Now don't be fooled by dip to black. Dip to black is both raise from black and dip back down to black, depending on where you put it on the clip. If you put it at the beginning of the clip, it's going to raise from black, and if you put it at the end of a clip, it's going to dip to black. So we'll go ahead and put that in there now. Just drag it right out, and you can see it highlights it. And that was actually cube spin, which I didn't want. See, watch, I'll show you what it looks like now. Kind of, well, actually that didn't do anything. But regardless, excellent opportunity to show you how to delete a transition. So we can see, here's the clip, and this little arrow icon right here is actually the transition. And if you notice, when I get my cursor to the end of this transition, I get that same stretch symbol. So I could feasibly stretch this transition out much longer. Okay, but I don't even want it. So I'm going to select the transition and hit the delete key. And it's going to delete my transition. So now we choose this one, and then we drag dip to black out. There we are. That's better. And we're also going to put it at the end. Okay, so now I don't have any transitions in the title slide yet, but we'll see what we get. So we can see here, comes up from black. Very good. Going to slightly dip down in opacity. There it goes. Title slide. Ta-da. And then dip to black on just the Bryant roll-in. So we have that. My time length of black from fully colored to fully black is just how I wanted it. Again, if I wanted it shorter or longer, I could just select the transition and either, oops, close that, and either make it longer or shorter as necessary. So there we have it. I also want my slide to fade in very similar, but obviously I'm not going to have it dip to black. If I had it dip to black, the entire frame would black out and then everything would rise back up. So what I'm going to use is called an additive dissolve, which is this one right here. And what it does is it just literally layers the next layer directly over the top with a bit of a fade. And you can see it's got a small amount of flash. So let's go ahead and use that and see how it looks. Transitions are something you need to play with. You need to figure out how you want it to look, and the only way you can really do that is just to try a bunch of different transitions. Adding them in and out is not overly difficult, so I just recommend you play around and you'll get a really good idea of what you can do with these things. So let's go ahead and play, see what we get. There we go, that's much better. And then we dip out, and then I also want this to fade out. So I'm going to, again, put an additive dissolve at the end. So now I have a dip to black at the front and back of my Bryant roll-in and an additive dissolve at the front and back of my title slide. I'm going to shrink the timeline. I'm going to really shrink the timeline here. There we go. I'm then going to highlight all my clips and move them back into position. Okay. And now I'll zoom in so you can see what it looks like down here. Okay. So as you can see, all my clips actually, I'll line them right up with the end of that title slide. So let's watch what we got. You always want to review your clips several times. There's my dip. Good. Fade to black. And away that goes. And then we come up here. Okay. So because that just kind of jumps right in at the end, I again want another dip to black. I'm going to drag the dip to black onto here and let it go. I'm then going to, again, preview, always preview. That fades in, that fades out, that fades out, and then this fades in. Okay, now, as you can see, it appeared as if the transitions were not working. This is because the computer is unable to process all the information I've just given it. It needs to create a single video file to which used in the preview window. So this is a process called rendering. And you can render at the beginning, at the end. You can render at any time. It's pretty simple. You can tell if you need rendering by, if we look up here in the timeline, this red line indicates that it requires rendering. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to render this clip, and just simply by placing the player head anywhere in the timeline, I generally do it from the beginning, and you press the Enter key on the keyboard. And then it's going to render these frames. This is going to take just a couple of seconds, and then we'll rewatch it. So for right now, we're just going to cut out real quick, and then we'll come back when this is rendered, and we'll continue on from there. Okay, that render process is finished, and as you can see, it is denoted by the green line now, no longer red, now it's green, saying that it has been rendered. So now when we watch through it, it should be much smoother. You should be able to see all your transitions and see what it's going to look like in the final product. So let's go ahead and watch. So there we are, a little quick dip up from black there. The Bryant symbol. Then as we approach the title slide, it's going to fade in. The Bryant roll-in will then fade out, and then the title slide will fade out. And then we have a dip up from there. Excellent. So, this is essentially how you apply transitions. You repeat this process at any time there's a juncture between two clips. If we look down on the timeline where my player head is right here, we have a juncture between two clips. So in this case, I'm going to use a cross dissolve. So it's going to shift, as we can see up here, from one to the next. When you're using transitions like this between two clips, as opposed to the dip from blacks we're using on the front and back here, you can actually span the two clips. So if I grab this and drag it down, you can see that the transition, let me zoom in for you so you can see it. You can see that the transition actually jumps the gap between the two clips. And again, you can extend or shrink this to create the look you're looking for. So it usually gives you a default of like, I think 2 or 3 seconds. So let's just watch it real quick up in our preview window and see what it looks like. There we are. So that's the kind of transition that I'm looking for. I'm looking to make these tutorials very basic, kind of home-like, as if they were just kind of done on the spot. So a simple transition like that, it does draw a small amount of attention to itself, but it does not scream that there's been some sort of change. So I'm going to go ahead, again, we'll pause the video, I will add all my transitions, just save my project there, and always remember to save. I'm going to add all my transitions, and then we'll come back and I will show you the last part of it. So just bear with me 1 second. Okay, and welcome back. So now what I've done is I've just added a couple of simple transitions in between each of the clips. I've just gone ahead and stuck with this cross dissolve. I put in one here, and then I put a dip to black at the very end. As you can see by the green lines, I rendered it and watched through it just to make sure everything was looking fine. The one thing I do want to do is I want to make the slide, or excuse me, the transition at the very end, this dip to black, a touch longer. So let's go ahead and watch it.
Slider in. That's PowerPoint Advancer.
There we are. So as you can see, that happens rather quick. So what I'm going to do, it started all the way over again, is find that clip right over here, zoom in, and then as I said, just as you can lengthen your clip by looking for this icon, you can also lengthen your transition. So I'm going to come here on this transition. Once I see it change to that, I'm going to drag it out, and you can see that there's time ticking up. Those are actually frames. There's 30 frames in a second, so there's 1 second. So we're going to make it 1 second longer. Let's go ahead and watch it.
That's PowerPoint Advancer.
Much better. And that's going to be the end of my show. So I'm going to go ahead and render and preview everything, make sure I have everything how I want, and then we're going on to the next tutorial, which should hopefully be a bit more brief than this one, on how to export it to either disk or a PC file that you can embed in a PowerPoint or just play on your computer. So thank you for watching. Any questions about editing or any other piece of audiovisual gear, please feel free to contact us at extension 6128. Thank you, and I will see you again.